BMW's new small coupe SUV corrects the strange relationship it once had with the X1. It's a lot bigger, and I happen to think it's a fair bit more handsome than the car it replaces. But does that mean it's better? We're here in Tasmania driving the electric and combustion engined versions of BMW's new X2, its sports activity coupe, if you will, and we're going to find out whether or not this car is worth considering. Of course, the first thing you notice about the 4-strong X2 range is how much bigger it's gotten. At nearly 20 centimeters longer and over 6 centimeters taller, you get more value in terms of total metal. The range starts at 75,900 for the 150 kilowatt xDrive 20i, which is 5k dearer than the equivalent X1, but does include the M Sport pack and therefore adaptive dampers as standard. All-wheel drive, 19-inch alloy wheels, Vaganza artificial leather upholstery, driving assistant professional, and illuminated kidney grills are some of the highlights. The iX2 xDrive 30 has a 64.8 kWh usable battery pack and twin motors. It mirrors the xDrive 20i spec for $85,700, and the one you see here features additional things including the enhancement pack that costs $3,615. A flagship M35i petrol costs $92,900 with a limited slip front diff, stiffer sport suspension and Vernasca leather upholstery. Compared to Mercedes, Volvo and Lexus EVs, the iX2 is on the money, though the petrol models are a little less enticing pound for pound. Being a premium marque, there are myriad options to check out, so head to carsguide.com.au for the detailed review with full specifications. While more conventional than its X4 bigger sibling, the X2 still isn't what you'd call traditionally beautiful outside. It is attractive and interesting and handsome, but I don't know if it's quite as well pulled off as the X1. Inside though, the X2 is a fabulous looking piece of kit. I really love BMW's new small architecture inside. The twin screens here on the curved display look really premium. A lot of the materials in here are really high quality as well. Nice soft touch dash and lovely materials here. This car we're sitting in has a combination exclusive to the X2 with this grey and white upholstery. I happen to think it actually looks really good and complements the red exterior very nicely indeed. Now moving on to the practicality inside this car, because it doesn't come at the cost of design. You've got this clever wireless charging pad that is vertical, and as Tim previously pointed out, it may not be great to not get distracted by your phone, but I didn't find it an issue while I was driving. There's a little bit more storage here that's open to the elements and a pair of USB-C charging points which complement a pair in the back. The general vibe in here is fit for purpose. Even the door cards are very generous, and it shows that BMW has really come a long way to considering not just design, but also the fit, the finish, and the practicality inside the front cabin of this sporty coupe SUV. The X2's technology package is fantastic, ushering the new OS 9 operating system software into the latest iDrive. No, there's no physical rotary dial, but the usability is generally pretty good and allows easy interaction with all of the main functions you need to use. Unfortunately, though it is an awful lot bigger than the car it replaces, the X2's backseat still isn't huge. And for that reason, if you're a family or you regularly carry taller people like me at 188 centimeters in the back seat, I'd probably recommend going for the X1. It just has a little bit more space. Though this is the electric model of the BMW X2, you do still have a little bit of a transmission tunnel hump there, but it's not such a big deal. Really, the issue here is width. The body sort of tightens in around the rear, so having 3 people across this bench of what is rather large small SUV still wouldn't be super comfortable, and that's why you're probably better off to go for an X1 for a family vehicle. But if you do happen to be just a couple or rarely use the rear seats of your sports activity coupe, then the X2 is a hell of a lot better than it was before. Up in boot capacity between 90 and 115 litres, the iX2's boot is actually really spacious. There's no spare tyre under the floor, but there is a mobility kit, and if you fold the seats down, they do go nice and flat, so carrying things like bicycles or flat pack furniture is no chore, and of course it's finished off with a power tailgate. A B48 2-litre turbo petrol 4-cylinder and 7-speed dual-clutch automatic get power to all 4 wheels. There are 2 states of tune in the petrol X2, the 150 kilowatt xDrive 20i and the 233 kilowatt M35i. The M35i hits 100 k's an hour 2 seconds faster at 5.4 seconds and scores a front mechanical limited slip differential.
Then there are the electric examples. We only sampled the 230 kilowatt twin motor xDrive 30, which is nearly as rapid as the petrol M35i, hitting the ton in 5.6 seconds. A front motor eDrive 20 developing 150 kilowatts will arrive in Australia shortly after. The WLTP range for the xDrive 30 is 417 kilometers from its 64.8 kilowatt hour battery pack. We saw 18.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers on a twisty, hilly loop. That would see you able to travel 356 kilometers from a single charge. DC charging peaks at a fairly average 130 kilowatts. That's enough to recuperate 10 to 80% charge in 29 minutes. AC charging can be done at up to 22 kilowatts for flat to full in under 4 hours. 12 months free ChargeFox public charging is included, as are Mode 2 and Mode 3 public charging cables. In the petrol M35i, we saw 9.8 litres per 100 kilometres on the trip computer compared to its 7.8 litres per 100 k's ADR figure.
Of course, being a BMW, what really matters in this X2 and the iX2 that I'm driving right now is how it drives, and I'm pleased to report that there are many facets about this vehicle that are excellent here on the road. Both the petrol car and the electric powered vehicles both have their merits. The ride is generally pretty good across all the cars. That much longer wheelbase than the old X2 certainly helps settle this thing, and it feels at least a generation better than the car it replaces. So I think BMW's really nailed a lot of the things they needed to when it came to developing the latest X2. Now let's dive into the specifics around all of the variants, because there are some slightly better ones and slightly less good. Starting with the iX2 that I'm in here, the xDrive 30. The naming is a little confusing, but this car is the second most expensive in the range, below the M35i. So it's actually more affordable to get an EV. BMW worked hard on the pricing to get below the luxury car tax threshold. And for that, you get a fair bit of car for your money. No, you don't get the same kind of technology a Tesla would give you, but the driving experience is better. It's really quite quiet in here, nicely refined. The roads down here in Tasmania have terrible surfaces, and even still, the EV stays pretty quiet. The ride quality is also quite good. Again, the choppiest, bumpiest roads that we've just encountered in this thing, the adaptive dampers do a fantastic job of masking the mass of this vehicle. Sometimes you do feel it come right to the edge of its damping performance, but on the whole, it's pretty good. You've got several settings. Comfort or normal seems pretty decent for most days. Sport cinches the damping control in a little bit better and gives a little bit of extra weight to the steering. Now, across all X2s and iX2s, I have repeatedly found the steering to be not to my liking. It's a little too light and seems a little vague off-center, but once you're in the meat of it, it is very sharp, and you can stiffen it up a little bit in sport modes, but still, I'd love to see a little bit of a revision and a bit more natural weighting to this vehicle, because behind that steering is a chassis that is really talented. No, it's not going to be like a 3 Series of old, or even an i4 today where you have that overt rear-wheel drive character. It's a planted, pretty comfortable and very talented piece of kit. And overall, I think that's exactly what the X2 needs to be. It doesn't astound, it's just a little bit more capable than a lot of competitors. It certainly drives a bit better than the Mercedes-Benz EQA and EQB series, which I found to be a little bit wallowy and floaty. The X2 definitely feels a bit more honed in and a little bit sharper. As for drivetrain calibration, I'm quite a big fan of BMW electric cars in general. I think the throttle response feels just natural. You've got 3 modes for the regen braking, low, medium, high, and then you've got an extra adaptive mode, which can be very helpful on the freeway. I'm in moderate or medium at the moment. I found high to be a little bit too much and low a little too little. The brake pedal also feels really natural, so driving around town, you can waft about in the iX2 and it feels natural, feels great. Talk about the petrol models as well, because there's the 150 kilowatt xDrive 20, which I happen to think is probably the sweet spot of the range. It's the most affordable, but I think it gels really well. The chassis, the compliance, the amount of power, and the crispness of that 7-speed dual clutch gearbox, which is new for this car, feels really good. I quite like the sound too. There's a little bit of throaty noise, which the M35i takes to the next step with active sound design, but it does feel a bit contrived. The M35i on the whole has that sort of contrived feeling about it, like it's trying to be really sporty, but the underpinnings don't quite gel. There's elements of full-fat M car, but it doesn't have that overt sporty character of an M3 or an M4. So I think the M35i, especially the one we drove fitted with the 21-inch alloys, is probably a little bit too stiff, a little bit too focused, and not exactly the X2's remit. Best instead to go for one of the iX2 variants. The affordable xDrive 20 that's coming along might be an awesome choice as well, because you can spec that up with a couple of options packs and you get a little bit more range thanks to it being front wheel drive only. This all-wheel drive does suck up a little bit more range.
The X2 and iX2 are yet to be evaluated by ANCAP or Euro NCAP, though their X1 and iX1 cousins were rated 5 stars in 2022. Safety gear includes 7 airbags, adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, autonomous emergency braking, and more. The systems are well integrated and driver friendly, as you'd expect from an enthusiast brand like BMW. Make sure to head to carsguide.com.au for the full detailed written review with all the safety details. A 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty now backs all BMWs up from the previous 3-year offer. You'll need to service the iX2 and X2 based on their condition rather than kilometres. The multimedia system will prompt you when you need to visit a workshop. Now you can pay upfront for service plans with BMW, and a 5-year package will cost you $3,171 for petrol X2s, while the iX2 is $2,186 for 6 years.
There, as you'd expect, the BMW X2 is a really nice drive out on the road. Not perfect, of course, but compared to its competitor set, this is definitely one of the sweeter driving electric and non-electric small SUVs out there.
The X2 does plenty right. Let us know your thoughts below and make sure to head over to carsguide.com.au for the full detailed written review.